Yeah, we'll just, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? Good morning. You know, the great thing about technology is whatever we're doing in this room, the live stream is on. So we got to start. We're so glad you're here. If you've just walked in, make sure to get something to eat or something to drink. If you need something, find Horace or someone that can make sure that you have what you need if you're visiting us today. We've had already a very inspiring morning. Our preacher's right there. Yep. There are a number of issues, important issues, that the church has engaged over the years, and there are moments when it feels like, and we could be wrong, but it feels like we might actually make some movement, that we have some opportunity. Ooh, the light came on. And this feels like one of those moments, right? And it might take some time, but the communities are watching. We at St. Luke's, you all at St. Luke's from well before I got here have been raising the flag, the orange flag, on this issue. This has been a topic of great concern for our community, as it should be. And in the last year, it has come very, very close to home. Our families, our neighborhood, which if we could ignore, and I don't think you did, what was going on in our city, it has come about as close to home as it can, and is too close for comfort for all of us. So today, at this event, what we get to do is hear from Chris 180. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions so that they can tell you about the great work that they do. You are going to leave here empowered to be involved in your community, to think about violence and gun violence, not just when it impacts our communities or our families, but anywhere in this city. And we are always thinking and continue to work on what we can do to change the structures around us so that fewer people in this city hold guns and fewer people in Georgia have guns. So get comfortable, feel free to keep eating, and after a couple of questions from me, we are opening up to questions from the floor. The way that we're going to do that is there's a microphone right there. We're going to ask you to come to that microphone for two reasons. One, we should see you. We need to know where the microphone is. It helps us, so you can get really close. And also the live stream picks up from there. So if we move that microphone out there, they can't see you on the live stream, and we'd love for you to be visible. It's kind of disorienting to hear something without seeing something. So when it's time for questions, if you wouldn't mind coming to that microphone, it's a huge help for us. All right, and then are y'all ready? Yeah. You guys look so exciting. Okay, and then these are on your tables. And these are for you to take away. There's a little bit of information about Chris 180. And there's another piece that is just about the current epidemic of gun violence from our own Don Plummer, who's pulled some resources together. That's also on your table, and feel free to take those away with you as well. Now, the way we're going to start, so you can hear everyone's voices, is I'm going to invite the three wonderful people sitting next to me to introduce themselves. So say your name loud and clear so everybody can hear you. But also, and you're going to take one of these mics, but also tell me what brought you to this work, why you do this work, and then what your role is at Chris 180. And then there's going to be more conversations. So you don't have to say everything, but say a lot of things, all right? Help us get to know you. We'll start with Kathy.
Okay, I'm Kathy Colbinson. I'm at Chris.
Can you hear her? Nope. Can you are the mics on?
Say it again.
Try it again.
I'm Kathy Yes, you can hear me now. Kathy Colbinson. I'm the CEO at Chris 180. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And many years ago, I was hired at Chris 180 as the executive director, and we worked with kids in foster care who had behavioral health issues who were highly traumatized. And we believed that it was really important to get into the beginning, to get ahead of the problem and to intervene early. So we pay a lot of attention to the social determinants of health. And for me, this job is a calling. My dad was a minister, and I'm a person of faith. and I believe that God loves every human being and that we have a responsibility, as Horace said this morning, to act. And so for me, this job is something I was called to do.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hannes Morrison, and I am the Vice President of Community Initiatives. So what that means in regular English is I oversee our violence intervention and prevention programs, which is our 2 Cure Violence programs, our teen violence reduction program, and also our adult mental health program with the Westside Empowerment Center, along with our 3 Promise Centers, where we collaborate with the Atlanta Police Foundation and some other providers. And really the goal of the community initiative is to work with a whole a whole family. So we're able to address the whole ecosystem. So to address the whole family holistically. So that's my responsibility. And I've been in child welfare, nonprofit, for over 17 years. It's also my ministry and my calling. So I'm in the right place. I'm a woman of faith as well. So I truly believe that we are God's hands and feet, and that we should always do the best we can to lead with love. So I have a sincere interest in keeping families together, especially for Black and brown families. And I've been really fortunate to do this work both locally and internationally. So I'm really excited to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Derek Townsend. I go by DT. I am the program manager at Chris 180 in our Community Initiatives Department. I oversee our teen violence reduction program. With our teen violence reduction program, we have one goal, and that is to divert and prevent crime before it happens. So we're working with that comprehensive age group of 12 to 17 to get them before they get involved in gangs, to provide opportunities for them to not only survive but thrive in their communities. And that's important to me. I got into this work because I am a survivor of violence. I grew up in a high crime, low income neighborhood, so I had the lived experience. My first interaction was meeting a need where, as a 17-year-old, I organized a peace treaty between 2 of the local gangs. So that's when I began to see the need and the opportunity for us to improve our community. And much like Hannes and Kathy have stated, I believe to whom much is given, much is required. And I'm one of those few statistics, unfortunately, that was able to make it out of that community. But I feel it's my honor and it's my duty and my obligation to provide opportunities for the next generation and those that are still struggling with the woes of our community.
Thank you. So to kind of set the larger frame, Kathy, I'm going to ask you this question, but anyone that wants to answer is welcome to as well. Part of how the conversation comes to us in the newspaper is that there are random shootings in our city, right? And then you kind of see a reaction or not a reaction to what do we do about that? And the Midtown shooting is an example of that. Like what just happened, right? Or the shooting of the child in the park, right? So we have a conversation about access to guns. We have a conversation about violence in communities. We have a conversation about poverty. I think those are the 3 areas. Help us understand how do we frame these so that, because your work is in very particular neighborhoods, right, that have been neglected, right, and help us frame the layers of concern we have and the different conversations that we're having.
So it's a complex issue, and it starts with children and young adults, people getting what they need and being recognized, being seen, being heard, being valued, and being also having the opportunity to learn what's called emotional regulation, which is calm yourself down. Yes, how to step back. So gun violence is generally perpetrated by people who have experienced trauma in their lives. And that trauma has been ignored and untreated. And the trauma can look different. Living in poverty is a trauma. Living in a home where you're belittled, regardless of economic status, is a trauma. And what we have learned in research is that trauma can turn something in the brain, in the body. It can, like, turn the switch, where a person can't regulate their emotions, they don't have the capacity to calm themselves down. If they have a predisposition, whether it's heart disease as a predisposition or a mental health issue as a predisposition. Also, trauma can look like mental health problems. It can be misdiagnosed as a bipolar disorder is a common misdiagnosis for someone who's experienced trauma. So it's important to be able to tease out all of the multitude of factors, because it's not a single incident. You can't say, well, this happened to you, because someone can be belittled in their own home and abused and still have the resources, the resiliency to live a productive life, whereas that same behavior toward another child, another person, could turn that switch in a negative way. So it's a complex issue, and it's, in my mind, it's a behavioral health issue. It's a public health crisis, gun violence is, and it is a trauma issue. So we have to, I believe, treat people as people of dignity and worth, no matter where they are. And give space, and that's what our programs do, try to give space for some, and build trust, because many people, they don't know how to get their needs met. And I'll just make one comment about guns. The access to guns is deadly. And I was, in terms of the sermon and what everybody in here can do, is you can vote. And you can remember, because if the gun is handy, a lot of kids carry guns because they're afraid of other people with guns. So a lot of adults go out and buy guns because they're afraid of other people with guns. And when a gun is handy, when you're upset, then that becomes a go-to. And so the problem, we're attacking the problem, but the problem is not ultimately going to be solved unless we elect people who are going to put common sense gun control in place. That's, maybe that was a little much, but.
No, I think we can hear that. I think it was heard. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of, and I know you all have had these every year, so I'm catching up, that we think about issues when they come to us, and this is the work you do all the time. So part of what we're learning about are things that are 10 minutes from here, right? Communities that are our community, our neighborhood, where that aren't making the news when there are shootings, right? When people are harmed. When I lived in South Central LA, it took me a couple of months to realize that week after week, I was hearing gunshots at night, and I would look for it in the paper, and I kept thinking I didn't know how to, I wasn't looking at the right paper. It wasn't covered. And all these police cars, these massive incidents, and it just wasn't covered. So I do have a question. So one, tell us about your programming. Tell us about the program that you're doing, who you're encountering, and tell us about one of your circles, like what that work is like. Tell us about who those people are, and then let's get to the gun part. Let's talk about the people that you're working with.
Okay. Well, I'll mention a little bit, and then DT can really delve in. So one of the services we offer is through the Trauma Response Network. Just as Kathy's mentioned, trauma is very pervasive, right, and very real. So this past week, I think we were living in intervention services who were in conferences all week discussing this. There was a shooting last week with 2 kids, and one young lady was killed. So with the mayor's office, with other providers, I think up until yesterday, and it's heavy. But it's one thing that was great about the conversations this week was for us to remind each other that trauma is very real, trauma lives in us, and typically trauma will show up first before the actual person. So it'll look different. So if you're looking at that person, you're thinking that's them, but that could be their trauma speaking, right? So just to keep that in mind. But we do have our trauma response network, which we think has been really, really effective and helpful for many reasons. We provide all kinds of services within Trauma Response Network to address the trauma, where we have healing circles, and where those healing circles can be very specific or very diverse based on the population, based on the need, based on what has occurred, based on what needs to happen. We also have services where kids are, we're doing yoga, things that focus on mindfulness, right, and that emotion regulation that Kathy talked about, in terms of being able to really calm your body first, right, and then your mind. So the Trauma Response Network is really impactful. The goal is for us to be able to provide those services in different community programs. Obviously, sometimes due to funding, we're limited in where we can touch, so we try to get really creative, and we're very fortunate to have a CEO that understands that and that backs that and support us. So when we find ourselves limited in certain areas, we now start to get very creative, and she's very good at starting good trouble. So that helps. But those are a few of the services that we do offer with the Healing Circles. We also have,
Say what a trauma response network is and what a healing circle is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our trauma response network basically is us involved in the community. We have different vendors, different providers, where we are training them with trauma-informed care services to be able to support the community. A healing circle basically is just like what it is. I will give an example. Let's say that someone passed away. Like DT and I both grew up in high-risk neighborhoods. I grew up in Boston, in Roxbury. So I remember the first shooting that I experienced was my brother's coach. And I was 19 at the time, and my younger brother was about 8 or 9, and his coach and I were the same age. I dropped him off for a basketball coach practice as usual. They weren't at the Y, they were outside. 20 minutes later, I'm picking him up because a 10-year-old, 12-year-old young boy was riding around his bicycle and shot this man in front of all his kids and killed this man. And that was my first experience with that, in terms of picking my brother up and dealing with that. So an example of that would be that park where that coach was killed, who was trying to do something great for his community, has now been tainted, right? There's a negative memory attached to that. There's trauma attached to that. So the Trauma Response Network, what they would do is basically be able to help reclaim that space, right? We would be able to get folks in the community to help reclaim that space, because that's their space. That's their community, where we may be able to have a vigil there, have some music there, have some art there, but give that space a new meaning, a new definition, if that makes sense. Feel free to chime in, sir. But to wipe away, because what's going to happen is after that shooting, everyone's going to avoid that whole park. Everyone's going to avoid the park, avoid the whole area, walk around it, do anything else but be there. So a part of the Trauma Response Network is to help communities reclaim back that space. Another thing also is actually a healing circle. We sit in a circle like this, and that's in a moment for us to be, that community to talk about their grief, their pain, their loss, where they're at. It's a safe space to just be yourself and talk about what's happening and go from there, right? And the goal is to train the community members to be trauma-informed so they can be able to lead these healing circles if are possible, or lead these type of services. So that way we're almost giving our community autonomy, and we're giving them the tools to be able to kind of claim back that space and support one another. The most important thing with the healing circles is that it's led with transparency, is led with love, is led with vulnerability, and to make sure it's a safe space. So those healing circles can vary. Maybe for that particular students that was involved in that particular shooting, they would be a part of that healing circle. There could be healing circles for single moms who've been battered. There could be healing circles for fathers or brothers who've lost loved ones. It could just vary based on the need. And our Trauma Response Network, we are so proud of the community involved because we have vendors who do yoga, Tai Chi, mindfulness, different type of activities to just teach our people, teach our family, teach our kids a different way to cope, a different way to manage their emotions, right? Not just honor their emotions, like Erin said yesterday, but to also give their emotions name, to identify it, for them to know what that is and how to deal with that and what to do next. So it's definitely diverse, but it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity that we're able to do from a holistic approach. I'm not sure if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I have a very unique opportunity at Chris 180 because I'm a part of the senior management team, but I'm also able to be boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea of what we do, so with the teen violence reduction, we know that that's proactive, so we look at that as prevention. With our Cure Violence, we're providing intervention. We're working with your highest risk shooters, those active gang members. So to get it in perspective for you really quickly in 60 seconds or less, since Thanksgiving, we've buried 18 of our youth, all under the age of 18. And when I say we, I mean our program at Chris 180. One of the hardest things that I've had to do in 2022 was help a mother pick out a suit to bury her 14-year-old son. Yeah. And I thought that was the worst thing. And then you heard about the shooting in Atlantic Station, and we work with that family. So now we're helping pick out suits for a 12-year-old son. So when you look at the dynamic of what we're doing, we just buried a young lady yesterday that was killed at Mays High School celebrating a graduation. So when you look at all of these dynamics, we are with these families in the trenches. When these mothers are crying and all of the news and the media have left and the case has gone cold, we're with these families providing those services through our trauma response, through our Cure Violence network, through our teen violence reduction. In community initiatives, we work as an ecosystem. And that's something that all of you should understand, is that you are a part of our ecosystem. Yeah. Our ecosystem has to be a multi-level and multidisciplinary approach because we are dealing with violence at an all-time high right now. And one of the things that you spoke about youth, I think one of the big myths is that a lot of these violence crimes are being committed only by youth. When we work with Grady in their hospital intervention program, where we're providing services for those individuals that have received gunshot wounds. We're at their bedside. We're working with them to help them transition after. We're making sure that they get that victim assistance and helping them recover. But when you look at the average age, it's 31. Yeah. When you look at the average suspects, it's 26. But what we're realizing is that model is being exemplified and example for our youth. So with our programs at Chris 180, we have a three-pronged approach. We're identifying, we're educating, and we're empowering our community. And when I say our community, it looks like this. And if I could just say this, it feels so refreshing to be in a house of hope, a house of worship, to see a church care about the work that we do. Because that young lady that we buried yesterday, I knew her personally. A lot of these kids we know personally. And the thing about it is we're working not only with the victims, but we're working with the suspects. So what does that look like? At 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, you're sitting with a mother who has to bury her child. And then from 7 to 9 or 10 at night, you're sitting with the suspect talking about options and taking accountability for their actions. So that is a very complex, as Kathy said, situation. But I want to say this. The work that we do is not doom and gloom. It is a lot of excitement, a lot of joy. We just had a celebration of achievement for our youth. Yes. So we're able to buy happy suits as well. And I call them those happy suits, those prom suits. So we're really in the trenches. And I'll say this, I think I'm over my 60
You're
seconds.
You're good, no, you're good. It's very good.
I'll say this, as a person that represents what it looks like when you invest into our community. And we're not just talking about bad kids. We're talking about our community. We have kids in our circles that want to be thoracic surgeons, that want to be attorney generals, that are just as tired as we are of the violence that they have to live with. And one of the things that is important with Chris 180 is we're very trauma informed and we're evidence based. So we're not just going out off of emotion and passion. We have an actual model where we treat violence like a disease, and we believe that it can be cured. And that's important because when you look at the criminal justice system, it's a punitive measure in how they deal with violence. But when you look at the public health perspective, it helps us get to the root cause. In my lifetime, I've had 32 of my friends murdered. I did not realize that was traumatic until I started doing this work. Another thing that I didn't know was that healing was even an option for me, because I'm living in an active war zone. My mother, who's visiting with us now for the last month, because she lives in the same house I grew up in her neighborhood, they came through at 11:30 and shot up the house, 55 bullets. The police came, they left at 1 o'clock in the morning. The same group came back at 1:15 and shot that house up again. And what we're looking at, it's not only happening in Atlanta, it's happening all over the world. And I'll say this as a message. God challenges us to love. I think the thing that's wrong with our society right now is that there is a love for power, and we've forgotten the power of love. So when we look at what we do at Chris 180, we have those like myself that are educated but have the lived experience and can work at a different level. You have Kathy, who has the heart and the passion. You have Hanez, who helps connect all of these moving parts to make sure that we're not only effective. Like I said, our youth not need only to survive, but they need to be able to thrive. I am a firm component and an example that poverty should not be a lifetime sentence. And regardless of your zip code or area code, you deserve an opportunity to be better.
I think this is the part where I tell you to take out your wallet and wave it in the air. I mean, wow, what a compelling vision. So help me understand this. So that you can't do the work you do and not work well with the police. And you've talked about how policing isn't the solution. It's a wonderfully sophisticated, right, way to think about what's actually happening. And I think with guns as well, there are a lot of factors here, right? We could take every gun out of the community, and we hope to, but that said, there's still a lot of trauma in those communities, and there's still poverty in those communities. There are other things that breed violence. So can I ask you to talk about the complexity of what it is that you're engaging, maybe specifically around, maybe police is the right place, or wherever you want to talk about that, but and all of you.
Why don't you explain how the model works with the police? Because we do work in partnership with the police.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about where the At Promise piece and who that, you can mention your piece, sir.
Okay.
Definitely, in terms of, we have relationship with the police, and it's important too. It's important for us to work together with one vision, right, and with one goal to be able to protect and keep our communities safe. With that said, it's a very delicate relationship with the police, because we need to ensure that obviously there are laws in place, there are things in place, safety measures and all of that. But we've been really fortunate to be able to create dynamics relationship with the police, where we have our three promise centers, for example, where if we have a juvenile or we have a child that's considered a juvenile, which is a word we don't really like, but and they've been arrested for something, right? But the police knows that they are a youth that comes to our Promise Center. We've developed a relationship with them where they can call us and say, hey guys, we have one of your kids, can we bring them over? We will feel more comfortable being able to drop them off with you all, where we're making sure that therapeutic services are provided, there's a therapist there, there's other folks that have a relationship with that youth, to be able to now put some support in place, hopefully avoiding that youth from being arrested. So we have that piece where we really try to work with the police and build that trust so that they know that we are also understanding their position and supporting where they're coming from, but they also understand what our goal is with our youth. So that's that piece. So far that's been working really well. Definitely requires a lot of back and forth engagement, just making sure that we're, room temperature checks, and we're checking and making sure that everyone is on the same page and feeling respected and all of that. That's that piece. With Cure Violence, and DC can talk about TVR more, because it's a non-policing program, is the whole model is evidence-based, right? We all know that gun violence is a public health issue. It's a public health crisis. So we work with the police in a strategic way where we use credible messengers, folks who have relationship in the community. They're credible messengers for various reasons. Maybe because they've been in the system themselves, maybe because they're in the community, maybe they've been in the system themselves, but they've done a kind of a U-turn, but they have very credible personality or character in that community. Folks know them, kids trust them, families trust them. And we work with those credible messengers to find out things. There are things that we know before the police knows. And just like DT said, one of those examples was regarding that Atlanta, the train shooting. There's certain things, and when we have this information, we can't just call the police and say, hey, officer, this, and that. We can't do that. But we have to now be strategic to ensure that if we are calling on credible messengers, if they're going to help us call on gang leaders, other folks in the community that's driving the violence, for a sit down, for a mediation like DT talked about. Sometimes if it's neutral information that we can give to the police to ensure that safety is happening generally. So we try to do that with our Cure Violence programs and make sure that we are interacting with the police, but not the traditional way that, things happen and we just kind of call them, if that makes sense.
So you're a community partner, and you're
Yeah.
working to reduce risk and violence in the community before things get to the
Before.
police, but also the police know if they encounter a young person who's crossed a line for some reason
Yes.
that's a part of your program, they can refer them to your program as opposed
Absol-
to taking them in.
Absolutely, because we focus on the prevention and intervention piece at Cure Violence and TVR. And those relationships are extremely crucial. And building those sincere trust is very, very crucial. You can't just show up in somebody's neighborhood and say, hey, I'm here to help, I'm here to do this. They'll tell you, well, go sit down somewhere.
Right.
So we have to be very strategic in how we do that, so yes.
And then can I ask, you can go, let me just ask the question. You can decide if you want to answer it, or you can say what you're going to say and someone's got to answer this question. We use this language a lot. I hear people say all the time that, or frequently, that gun violence is a public health problem. So someone should explain that. But that can be after you, if you want.
I can tie it in. Too.
Okay.
I can tie it in. Both.
I'm sure you can. Yeah.
So I'll say about the police, and I'll just be transparent. The other day, I had a moment. Like, some of us did some things we shouldn't have done when we were younger. So that's why God gives us grace and mercy.
Amen.
But I was in a room at City Hall, and I'm looking around this room, and you have attorneys, superintendents, the mayor, and then there's the chief of police, Chief Shearbaum, who's really made a commitment to our community, regardless of what the media may say. The police are here, and they're a part of our ecosystem. Yeah. So I'm sitting here, and I'm talking directly to Chief Shearbaum, and I had a moment. I said, man, I remember when I used to run from the police. And I say that because it's come full circle. And it's one of the beautiful things about Chris 180. My father was a Navy man, and he told me this. I told him one day, I said, Dad, I really changed my life around. I made a 360. He said, well, then that means you're back in the same place. He said, what you want to do is you want to make a 180 turn. So it's so ironic, but here I am in a room where the police chief knows my name. And we're working, and we're building that trust and transparency. We can't do it without the police. We can't do it without the fire department. We can't do it without the hospitals. We can't do it without the people that can employ our youth. We can't do it without you that are in this room. So when we look at the relationships, we work closely with the mayor's office. We work closely with the school system. We work closely with all of our community stakeholders. But when you talk about public health, what does that look like? A young man commits a crime, or a young woman commits a crime, and we see the crime. Public health allows us to go and look at the root causes. So when you take, for example, a lot of our youth, the young man that we sent to the celebrity, the achievement celebration, he's 17 years old. He didn't have a pair of dress shoes. He didn't have a shirt or a tie. So what that tells me is that he's never been in an environment where that's necessary. So we're looking at root causes. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have to meet those needs. We have to look at, why is this young man bringing a gun to school? I got a text from one of our school administrators about a second grader they found with a loaded gun. And Kathy alluded to this earlier. Our youth and our young adults are not just carrying guns because it's fashionable. They're scared. Yeah. They are just as terrified as we are, but they're living in it. When we leave here, including myself, some of us will go to gated communities. Some of us will go to homes that are plush, that have running water and air conditioning. But when you look at these young people, there are root causes, and the public health approach allows us to not be so punitive. That allows for chance for diversion, that we offer through our At Promise Centers, working with the Police Foundation, where it takes youth that are suspended, that would normally be kicked out of school, and we work with them, showing them a different way. Again, if there's nothing else that you remember, we are only as good as our opportunities. And I was one of those people that was afforded great opportunities. I had great mentors. I had great people along the way that showed me love. We did a survey the other day, and this speaks to the public health aspect of the trauma. We did a survey in our little group, and what was the one thing that you needed to feel complete? And I'm thinking that we're gonna get some crazy answers and money and all of these things, and the one thing that they felt that they needed was support, and the number one thing was hugs.
Oh my goodness.
And when you look at human contact, some of our youth are belittled at home. They have no human contact. They go to school, they're made fun of because of the shoes they have on. They're hungry, they can't focus. And we're saying, kick him out of class, suspend him, which does nothing further but put him further behind in school. But when you look at the public health and the criminal justice approach, if we merge those together, we can understand that we can combat the violence that we see, working with the hospitals, working with the Department of Public Health to put things in place. If we treat it like a disease, then we realize it can be cured. And if it can't be cured, then it can at least be treated. So when you look at the public health approach, think about that. What is causing the violence to occur? And what are the underlying factors that are causing these youth to risk their life for a few dollars?
Yeah, and I think the retaliatory violence.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of our intervention is with the retaliatory violence. So getting into the community, helping the community deal with the violence without responding with violence.
Yes.
And that's kind of the bottom line of the public health approach, is the intervention so that the transmission of violence may occur, but it doesn't continually transmit and build on itself. So and there's just, they've talked about a multitude of approaches that we use, but the heart and soul of it is understanding that the origins are related to trauma and children and people not getting or not have gotten what they needed and deserved as human beings and children in the world. And I just want to add that Chris 180 is in 80 schools, 80 Title I schools with school-based mental health. And so we're at Mays High School.
Yep.
So we leverage all of our partnerships and relationships in addition to leveraging all the other programs we have. Housing is a huge issue. For our community and our families. So it's back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, that's now really popular, but I mean, people know about it.
Yeah.
And that was my master's thesis was on that a long time ago. But it does come down to that.
Yeah.
And when we expect people who've been so traumatized and are down on the basic needs to be able to respond to situations that encounter in the world in the way that we might respond, that's not fair because they're not equipped. And so the things like yoga, we take trips to the mountains, we have staff who take kids hiking. We do things that expose them to different things and to show them opportunities.
Yes.
And it's all done in a way that validates them for who they are, where they are.
Right.
And that includes gay kids, trans kids, people, you know, of all backgrounds. So it's really that acceptance is really the key.
That's fantastic. So we're going to open the floor up to questions, but before we do that, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, so you got to do it fast. Everyone gets like 30 seconds. Around your table, it's going to be loud, but why are you here today? Will you tell each other? Will you make a little healing circle of your own? Maybe we'll give you 7 minutes. So make sure everyone speaks. Try to. But why are you here? What brings you here? Oh, that's a good idea. Water's a good idea. You guys are great.
Yes, that's not a problem talking. So it's good.
You know, Kathy, yesterday we were at the CDC event,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, all week
they
from
were,
Thursday, Friday.
yeah, for Thursday and Friday, well, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it was so interesting. One of the people said, one of the people from JR said, "You're vaccines." And I'm thinking like, wow, I never even looked at it like that because we're like, when you said we're preventing the spread of transmission.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We're
right, everyone. I'm going to try to bring you back. It's going to take a minute. All right, well, there's going to be more opportunity for conversation. You can be friends for a long time, and if you come back here on Sunday morning, we're always here. So there's lots of opportunity to keep going with these conversations. So a couple of things before we ask questions. We're about to start with some questions. I see Don poised to ask the great first question. One, let me acknowledge the folks that organized this. I think Marty Breen is here, Ray Utenhove is here, Ann Kramer is here. Thank you. We're very grateful for you that we have this opportunity together. And we're here till about 1 o'clock, just so you all know. So you're getting a sense of your time. And again, this is exactly how you ask a question. If you wouldn't mind saying your name so we know who you are. And if you're directing your question to one of the group, please do let us know. Yeah.
I'm Don Plummer. I'm a member of St. Luke's. And I want to know how I and others here can do something. How can we get personally involved? Whether it's whatever it is.
I'll take that question because I want all of you to be involved. Let me paint a picture for you, okay? We all know what Six Flags or an amusement park. I'm from the Midwest, so we had Kings Island and Cedar Point. Let's imagine this. If you've never been to an amusement park, right? But you go past the amusement park and you're hearing all of these screams. Some of those screams are terror, because it's terrifying to be on that roller coaster, but some of them are sure exhilaration. So what I say to you is to, number one, get involved, but come and see the community that we serve. So when you go to Six Flags or you get on that roller coaster, you can decide for yourself if it was exhilarating or if it was terrifying or if it went from one spectrum to the other. So when you look at what can you do to help, money is good. We always need money. I'll say that again. We always need money.
Do you need money?
Yeah, we need money.
Yeah.
Mucho dinero. So, but where's the money going? Yeah. Come and follow where your money is going. And I say that without getting approval because I know the work that we do because I do it every day. Yeah. But come and feel the environment, Don. Come and see the youth that we service, and you too can feel that exhilaration of being on that roller coaster of what it looks like to change the paradigm and the narrative of our community. So come get involved. We invite you to come to our centers, our sites. Come to our MPU meetings. We service the MPUV, MPUL, and MPUY. And those are MPUs or neighborhood planning units. And Atlanta has 25 of them, all except for you, because they thought it'd be confusing to have an MPUU. And it kind of sounds like that now. But come and get involved. We're 10 minutes away. And y'all know, y'all are in this community, so you understand. But come see what the work looks like. Find out what it is that you like to see changed about our community. And then connect with us. Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Yes. Donate, donate, donate. Yes. Time is money. Energy is always needed. Yes. I was just telling, we were just talking. And I said, I wish I could have brought, I didn't get to this point, but I said, when I look at this room, it's refreshing. I wish I could have brought 10 of the young men and women that we work with to let them know that people like you, that look like you, care about them. Our youth don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is important. So showing up, having these events, thank you, I will do that. Having these events, getting involved. There are a ton of things that we're doing through community outreach, but this is where it starts, Don. You're doing it right now. Right. So that's what I want you to know. You're doing it, and I can help you do more. Right.
Who do I get in touch with?
I was going to help you with that. You can get in touch with me. You can get in touch with DT. Everyone calls Kathy. But we have visits. You can come to our sites. We can sit down. We can do an introduction with the staff. We can do a walkthrough in the neighborhood together, bring your sneakers. But that helps, and it helps the kids to see you, the families to see the youth, and then you get to see and ask questions. Because like DT said, we are all the same people. We're all God's children. Yep. we're the same people. I think sometimes society makes us think that we're different. You know, some of us, yes, have been fortunate enough to be able to grow up in more stable environments and things of that sort. But I think when you're able to come and see this firsthand and let them see you guys, and they can say, oh my gosh, you know, you sound just like my uncle, you sound just like my grandma, you sound just like my dad. Oh, so old people are the same, young people are the same, teenagers are the same. Like, 'cause, you know, they speak the same language.
Did you just say old people are the same?
That's what my
I
children tell
heard.
me. So I was included in that. That's what my 12-year-old tells me. But you know, they can see that, you know, when we don't understand TikTok, it's universal. None of us understand TikTok, really. So just come, and Kathy's definitely can be able to put you in the right
Thank you.
direction. Yeah.
We can arrange that.
Yes.
And I think the important thing about coming, I want to reinforce, is the interaction. It's not just coming to do something that doesn't
Yeah.
involve interaction.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, thanks. There was so much media attention given to the increase in trauma, increase in teen suicides, depression, following the pandemic. So a lot of us were heartened to see a real bipartisan energy in the General Assembly around a package of mental health reforms. And that seemed to be focused mainly on increasing the increasing access to mental health professionals, counseling, that sort of thing, which was probably necessary. But what I'm interested in is, how can we get more investment in these community-based, trauma-informed programs? My table was so impressed with the nitty-gritty nature of your work on the ground. And I would want the general, I realize I'm talking about money and that's not the same as relationships, but an investment in your programs is an investment in the kinds of relationships you've identified. So what do you see as the potential for the state government to be more of a partner than it's
Well, the legislation was a good first step, and there was some funding recommended in the legislation, which the governor disregarded, and so the money is not there. We do have workforce challenges. We have them at Chris 180, and we have them across the state in terms of the Medicaid rates. Medicaid was not expanded in this state. The Medicaid rates are low in this state. The Medicaid state plan is written in a way that limits services. So there are, I'm back to voting, and contacting your legislatures, but voting. Because in order for a contact to be real effective, you have to have someone who's ready to listen.
Right.
Yep.
So I think that is really important. Thank you, Panky.
Hi, I'm Patty Williams. I'm a member of St. Luke's. I'm a school psychologist, and I'm also a therapist, and I work mainly with the refugee population. And I also have 3 schools, Title I, and I also have clients who are in high school and middle school. So I have a few questions. As a school psychologist, I'm going to ask you this: data. Do you have any data that supports the success? I know anecdotes are great. We all have those, but what kind of data do you have? That's the school psychologist part of me coming out. So,
I can't quote it off the top of my head, but we do have data.
okay.
And we look at things like treatment plan goals. We
Yeah.
look at, in Title I schools, we also look at the family relationships and their caregiver strain surveys and
Yeah.
things like that. So we have a lot of different measures. In our school-based mental health program, 2 of the goals we have are to reduce out-of-school suspensions
Oh, hallelujah.
and out-of-classroom, so that we've created things like peace corners in classrooms where children can calm down without being expelled, because if you're not in the classroom, you can't learn. So,
And that's great.
So we look, and we also look at grades, although measuring and we have a lot of parents have to share it. The school won't share the grades. The parents have to share it. So, but we see great improvement in the ones who are willing to share.
That's great.
And we also use data in our violence intervention programs as well. Because like you know,
Yeah.
without data, you don't exist.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what we say,
That's
how
the
we say
truth,
it, if
yeah.
we smiled. So that drives a lot of what we're doing. And that's one of the reasons why we follow the Cure Violence Global Model, where it is evidence-based.
Right.
Because the data helps us to find out what the needs, what the progress has been. You know, has it reduced in this area? Which area in the city actually have the highest crime rate, right? And what's the age? What's the medium age? What does that look like? What are some of those social determinants that Kathy talked about? Are those still coming up? So data is extremely important for us. Our outcomes, our measures, you know, our organization has invested a lot, even with our NetSmart, being able to track all of that across the organization. Because it's one thing for us to come and give hugs and do all these great things, but if we're not able to
Prove it, yeah.
it doesn't
happen. It doesn't exist.
happen. And it doesn't serve us well,
Yeah.
or our communities as well.
Right.
I'll share this really quick with you, Patty. One of the things that we've done with data, and this is a different way to look at data, with our Cure Violence, we're always in the community, we're canvassing, we're working, we're entrenched. One of our local community stores, we put a flip chart in that store, and that flip chart counts the days that violence has not occurred in that
That's a
Pittsburgh
great idea.
community. The other day, when I looked at
That's
that
a
flip
great
chart,
idea.
it blew my mind. It was 210 days. And
That's
this is
great.
one of the, you can clap for that, that's important.
We could do that at
Because
school.
that means that that's 210 days where that community, which was identified by the federal government as one of the highest crime area, has gone 210 days. It's only 365 in a year. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed and our prayers up. But that's the kind of data that matters. And this is the thing, we don't flip the chart. The community flips the chart. So when you go into the store and you see it at 89, you start to say, okay, what is this? At first they thought it was a scoreboard because it kind of looks like the old school scoreboards. But then you educate them and you give them an opportunity. So now they're looking at data. Now they're looking at data a different way. And a lot of our programs are grant funded, so we have to have those metrics.
Right.
We have
So
to.
I might steal your idea for my schools.
We're happy to share.
If
For
it'll
sure.
help, if it'll help a
Because
community, then it's all yours.
suspensions and everything. And that's another conversation I'd like to talk to y'all about sometime. How on earth do you get administrators to buy into that? But I got another question.
Well, I'll just say
Okay.
we don't go into a school who doesn't agree to work with us with trauma-informed care.
And all of
get
our
training.
schools know trauma. You ask we've all had that. You know what I
Well,
mean? But it just doesn't.
We make sure it takes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another thing I want to, this is something I'm really passionate at, and I know my table was probably like, you need to shut up. But, so one of the things that, two things I really want to know. Because trying to deal with the trauma of the kids and the faculty, me included, in schools where there have been guns found, where there have been lockdowns. One of my teen clients said, well, that's normal. You know, they're telling me they're afraid to go to school. So well, how do you go? And he said, well, we just suck it up and go. They all have their cell phones. They have cell phones, you know. It's just really hard. And so the other thing, too, is a story. I deal with the refugee community. And as a therapist, you probably can know which people you have kind of, quote, lost. And the ones I have lost have been Burmese boys. And they join gangs, no joke, for noble reasons. They want to take care of their families. They see no other options. And in the Burmese community, there are like 8 different ethnicities and language, and they don't support each other, and so it's no community, versus like the Somali community. So what you're saying about the poverty and everything else is so true. But how do you address that? And then the educational system fails them. You know, they fall through the cracks. So, and they're 20 years old in the 9th grade. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But how can we calm the please don't say trauma-informed kid. It's a great thing, but I've heard it ad nauseum. So how do you help these kids when the school system doesn't believe there's a problem and that the kids are afraid? How do you help these kids? I can't say, oh, don't be afraid, there's nothing to worry about, when there is.
Patty, I'm going to actually hit pause. I actually am going to invite you and Kathy to have a very serious conversation
Yeah.
about your school. Quite seriously, because
Yeah.
this is too big for this conversation.
It is, but
Kathy, I'm going to let you respond, but quite seriously, Patty, you guys should talk about this, because
Yeah.
maybe there's something really beautiful that y'all can build together.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention with the Burmese population with the boys, there's a lot that has to do with the culture's perspective for them. But the thing is, you're going to have to do research to find out what is honor in their culture. Because why it's easy for them to be able to connect with a gang to take care of their home, because back home there's a lot of armed robbers who are in that type of cult. And a lot of them will utilize the concept of, I'm doing this to take care of my family. So there's some cultural components on the flip side, you can also utilize that same cultural perspective to give them a different perspective. Because not everyone in their country is doing the same thing.
No, I agree.
So, but
Yeah.
it ties back to honor, it ties back to their value system and what represents stability, protection in that culture. So I have some ideas I can share with you.
Okay, that'd be great.
But I would just think of in terms of research for that particular population.
Yeah, because the Chin, you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
But the Karen and Karenni and all those, you do.
All right, it sounds like you guys have a rich conversation to have. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Jane Long, and I am a grateful member of St. Luke's Church. And I want everybody to know in here, and I am so grateful for what y'all are doing. And I just can't say enough about how grateful I am. I was on the board of TAC for 25 years. I really am a believer that mental health has got to be taken care of in this country. However, I need everybody in here to know that my grandson was shot, 15 years old, in a skateboard park. He was skating just to the bathroom, and somebody came in with a power rifle and shot him in his femur. It is by the grace of God that he is alive today. And it is by the grace of Grady Hospital that he is not crippled. Now, I want to say to y'all, and I want y'all to help me with this. If you have an alcoholic, the first thing you do is pour out the whiskey. If you've got gun violence in a country, you get rid of the guns. And that's what we've got to concentrate on. Please, I ask you and everybody in here to vote to get this country to deal with the guns. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leslie Anderson. I'm with the Jewish Community Relations Council, and I have a couple of questions. One is that when we talk about communities, I've noticed that on your map it is very Atlanta-focused, and I actually live up north, which isn't to say that we don't have gun violence there, because we do. Much like poverty, people don't want to admit that either up there, but we do have it. So one of the questions I have is do you have relationships with other organizations that work outside the Atlanta area that we can connect with to also do some of this amazing work, both on the ground and in a larger way, including political mobilization. And as part of that, what role do faith leaders have, or can faith leaders play in working together with other faith leaders like temples and synagogues and mosques, et cetera, to come together to take on these issues that are not just, they are about guns, but certainly about the trauma issues that you expressed, et cetera. So that's my one question, is how do we engage, and do you guys do that currently, and how can we spread that? And then the second question I had was, do you guys know of any, I don't think people have talked about the economic impact of gun violence. I have a friend who's recently experienced that, and I am stunned at how expensive it is to be shot by somebody and to have to deal with the hospital bills and the medical bills and the lack of insurance and the specialization of care and having to refit your house and having to get a special wheelchair and having to get your house redone and as a single mom with her own business, having to be able to try to take care of her business and her kid at the same time. I know she's not the only person going through that, and I am just, as a middle-class white person who lives up north, I am just stunned by it. And it breaks my heart because I know that a lot of the communities you all work in don't have even nearly the type of resources we do. And yet they must be confronted with that as well. So I would throw that into my mix of my question in regards to faith leaders and community. How do we address the economic stress? How do we utilize faith leaders within those community pockets to build a stronger support network for all who are impacted by this?
I'll say this, and I followed you on your questions, and I just want to thank you for being so informed and aware. And what you're saying is very important. Faith leaders, we can't do this work without God. This is God's work, so let's start there. When you look at the work that we do, this is just simply a ministry. Our pulpit is the community. And when I say community, I'm talking from Bankhead to Buckhead to Roswell. We are the village. And one of the things that is refreshing, but at the same time sad, is how we respond in tragedy. When there are mass shootings or when there's a disaster, hurricane, you see that community come together. But when everything is nice and rosy, some of the neighbors don't even talk to each other anymore. I grew up in an era where we were going out of town. You let Mr. Charles know that we're going out of town and he's going to get your mail. He's going to make sure that the trash is taken out. But we don't live in that community type anymore. In terms of what we can do in North Atlanta, Chris 180 is a great program. We have a great organization. We have so many different programs. We're always looking to expand. And I'm one of those people that push the envelope. We work wherever there's a need, that's where we'll be. So we look at what that looks like, and it starts with people like yourself that know what's going on in that community and that can put us in the right places where we can be effective and affect that change. But to speak about the victimization, I have a young lady that I met recently. Her fiance was murdered. It was a high-profile murder that's been on the news for a year. She's been evicted 3 times. She couldn't afford to bury him. She's a mother. She's tried to start an organization to help those that are going through what she's going through, but she's drowning right now. Yep. And it's because we don't understand the ramifications and the economic down spiral that happens after a shooting. Yep. A lot of times that community, number one, is taken down in terms of what the value of the property is worth. And then let's talk about those spaces where we have youth and adults that are killed, and we have to walk through there. And some of those youth don't want to walk through there anymore. If someone was killed here, how do you go through there without remembering and understanding? Because there are a lot of times teddy bears, there are crosses, there's graffiti to signify that. So when we look at what are we really doing, the faith-based community is the answer. I've spoken a lot of places this week, this month, this year. I was excited to come here today because I am a believer. Whether you're Catholic, whether you're Jewish. One of my mentors, God rest his soul, was a guy named Riley Kablo. And he was a successful Jewish businessman in Indianapolis, Indiana. But what he poured into me as a young black boy, I'll never forget. And it was so ironic. And I'm saying this, and it's on course. So the other day, my mother brought me a gift. And Riley's been dead for 10 years. But she brought me an original Louis Vuitton bag that he left me. And when I got that bag, it took me back to that 10-year-old kid that I was when he called me a genius. And I never forgot that. So what am I saying? This church, Riley Kablo planted a seed in my life that's manifested 30, 40 years later. Well, 30 years later, I'm not that old. I had to do the math.
20 or 30.
But it's manifested. So when I look at Pastor and the seeds that we plant, sometimes when you look at the harvest, sometimes you plant the seed, sometimes it's your job to water it, sometimes it's your job to harvest it. We have to plant the seeds, and we have to get back to the root cause. God calls us not to judge each other, but to love each other. So we cannot do this work without God. So when you say, what does faith-based look like? I talked to 5 ministers yesterday, and I told them, we need to get God at the forefront of this movement if we're ever going to make sustainable change.
So I'm just going to extend an invitation to come north and have this same conversation there.
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it. I'm on my way.
Let's make it happen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lacey Stallman, and I'm the Gun Violence Prevention Chair at the Temple, one of 10 affinity groups. And I go back with a couple of people here, Pete and Panky Miller and Don Plummer, to when we were all starting to lobby at the Capitol against the Guns Everywhere bill. And we know how that happened, and we know what's happened in the 10 years since. Nothing, right? Bupkis. I've gotten very disenchanted with the direction and everything lately, but you have renewed my faith, because seeing what you're doing and you're making a huge difference, I want to thank you for that. And you were talking about how to go into a space where there's been violence. My dear friend, my 102-year-old friend, Clara Bridges, you may have seen her on the news. She's an African-American woman who's been a member of the Temple for over 60 years. She was in that waiting room at Midtown Northside Hospital. She was sitting next to a woman who was shot. That's how close she came, and it has affected her in a big way, but she still has her faith. I'm going to ask you a question, and all you have to do is answer yes or no. Would you? I'm meeting with Rabbi Berg tomorrow. Would you come to the Temple and do this there?
You know, I will. And it's so, God works in mysterious ways. I will with Kathy's permission. But Rabbi Berg was one of those pastors that someone told me they wanted me to meet, and I needed to meet him within 2 weeks. So by you saying that, it's confirmation.
I can arrange
so,
it,
yeah,
yes.
The pastor, the mayor's pastor, Reverend Sean Smith, was one of the ones that introduced. So I'll definitely be there. If you let me know,
I
got to
saw
check
Sean
with my
yesterday.
wife. Yeah, so
I
you
saw
know I'm
him
telling
yesterday.
the truth, right?
Yes,
I'll check
thank
with
you.
my wife and make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm going to apologize. I'm so sorry. It's 1 o'clock, but these guys I'm sure they can hang on for a minute. I need to, honor your time. It's 1 o'clock, and let us thank our guests. I need to honor our staff and kind of how we've organized the day. So you're very welcome to have your conversations and get some food and enjoy your Sunday. For you all that have questions, I think you can stick around to take their questions. So please come forward so you can talk to them personally. And for all the rest of you, thank you. You know, it's easier to break something than to fix it, as my dad used to say. And we're really broken. We have broken by how we've passed laws, how we are founded as a nation, how we've lived together. The fixing is a lot harder, and it's small, and it's detailed, and it's going to take all of us. And Chris 180 is one of the wonderful groups we can join to be a part of that. Jane Lafferty just brought us a group that we can work with on getting food to some of these communities, these Title I schools where kids are hungry on the weekend, and deciding how they can eat, and we're going to get in. And thank you for your attention and your great work, and there's more to do. And thank you all. Thank you.